Uh, Something I saw on X this week that was really disturbing. That's
Um,
on topic, but it's going to be controversial. Yeah, you were shocked that something on X
I'm
was
shocked.
disturbing. Yeah, we were scrolling on X before the show, and so everything's either political or controversial. Like there's nothing good that's coming across, and this is the stuff that's trending. But I saw there was a video of a mom that took her young daughter to get her first round of testosterone. This Satan is real. And if Satan wants to do anything, it's rob us of the dignity that we have as men and women
Yeah.
and sow confusion in that identity. Because God's plan is that we grow into that identity and we become the best men and women that we can be, that we recognize that we need a savior, that we're sinners, we need a savior, and introducing Jesus into our life and having a relationship with him helps us be the best man, woman that we can be. And whether that means becoming a father, whether it means becoming a priest, whether it becomes a mother, or having a religious vocation, living a consecrated life, which is a holy life set aside, set apart for God. But to your point, like we want to give our kids everything based on what the kid wants. So the kid isn't uncomfortable. It's tragic to see parents going along rather than parents being who they ought to be. I'm not your friend. I'm not here to make life easier for you. Life is hard. I'm here to help you and I'm here to guide you.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, I'm here to tell you what's right. I'm here to help form you in your identity. You don't tell me what your identity is and then I'm going to go along with it when you're only 5, 10, 15 years old. I'm here to help you in that. So that video just broke my heart.
That's it.
It's like the mom was crying with her daughter because it's almost like she was doing something good for her daughter.
Virtual signaling.
I'm sorry. I mean, it might be genuine, but God, is that a distorted sense of what motherhood ought to be?
Yeah.
It's distorted.
Yeah, and Pope Francis just spoke out against gender ideology in general. As Catholics, what we're supposed to believe.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, a lot of people who call themselves Catholic, they don't follow church teaching. They're what we talked about before is cafeteria Catholics. But we in this episode, Katie and I, we tackled all these subjects, but a part of it is boundaries. We think that boundaries and rules, as Catholics, you guys are all about the rules and the regulations. Like, no, that's part of it. We didn't make these up. These come from God. They're revelation.
Yeah.
But they make it sound like that's a bad thing. We talked about the rules and the umpire, but if you don't have these rules, then it's just chaos. It's like the kids, going back to that analogy, when the kids are playing soccer and they just make up their own game and the goal changes every time, they're not going to have fun because they don't know what to expect. But if they know, okay, look, in between these two trees is the goal, this is out of bounds, that's out of bounds, then they can find a way to play and to do it. But if we get rid of all the rules, we get rid of all the structure, they're not going to have any fun. And as parents, that's our job, is to put these boundaries in place because that's what kids want, that they're longing for, whether they say it or not. They want to know that they're sturdy, that you're going to be there to help guide them. And when they don't know that we're going to help them, but not to go by every one of their whims, their prefrontal cortex isn't formed yet. What do they even know about life in general? They can't even put together complete sentences and paragraphs and an essay.
Yeah.
How are they going to determine for the rest of their lives this irreversible damage to their bodies? And we're having a crisis of mental health. I mean, that's what has always been called throughout the church.
I've been seeing videos online and it resonates with my experience. I'm sure it resonates with yours of like home video footage from high school kids.
Yeah.
Just as early as like 2005, 2007, 2008, there was like a wholesomeness that you see in the kids of that time. I go to schools today, or you look at young people today, there's almost like this glaze over their head, over their faces. Yeah. They're so overstimulated and they're so dissatisfied.
Yeah.
We're doing this generation a disservice by just letting them go along with their whims and supporting them in it rather than being those anchors that set those healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
And so, Elon was trending a couple weeks ago, if that even, because his boys had met the Prime Minister of India and they both had books and like they were both math books. And I went online, I went on Amazon to look at one of the books and it was sold out already.
Wow.
And it was like, this is what one of the richest men in the world is doing. He can afford every kind of electronic device for his kids, and they can afford it for themselves. But they're walking in to meet a prime minister holding books. It's like that's what we ought to be doing for our kids, letting them engage their intellect and their creativity. And you've got to model it, which their dad is definitely modeling it for them.
You can't just tell them to do it and you're not doing it.
No.
You know, I struggle with, you know, I'm doing tons of stuff on social media with this and a Catholic couple, but so I find, you know, starting to when everyone gets home, I just put my phone away for a while, at least to give that time. But that's one thing. When I grew up, my parents didn't model that for me to read books. We never had any books in the house. I mean, it's like kids' books, but I never saw my parents one time reading ever. Yeah. So I read a little bit in high school and a little bit in college. I read what I had to for school, nothing extra, never for fun. It wasn't until where I consciously wanted to learn myself. But I think why a lot of people don't like reading is because it's not a screen, obviously, but it makes you sit still and think. Like you can be scrolling and do like 5 things at once, but if you're reading a book, you have to be focused. If not, you got, whoa, what was I reading? You got to go back again. It literally helps you. It helped me like to pray. It helped me to do all these things because you have to be focused and you have to sit still and you can't be distracted. It's like it's taking all your attention and focusing. It's like it's different than listening, you know, because you could be driving your car, listen to a podcast and you can learn things. But to sit down and to read, you can't be doing anything else. You have to be focused just on that. And a lot of people don't want to do that. It's because we're so distracted by this dopamine dump that we get all the time from the scrolls and the likes and the clicks. And
well, I don't like reading off a tablet. I like holding a book.
Oh, I can't. Yeah.
I like flipping pages. I like feeling like the tactile.
Have to have a book.
I like writing in it, highlighting it, all that stuff. Some people like reading off tablets. I find I'm very big on identifying triggers in my life. I'm not always the best at responding to them. But to me, a tablet's a trigger because when I go to a tablet, it's like, that's what I go on. That's what I use for social media. That's what I use for YouTube. That's what I use for streaming videos. That's where I get messages and
work,
FaceTime calls and all that stuff. So it's like my attention is still divorced from what I'm doing. So if I wanted to sit down and read and I'm doing it on a tablet, I'm still thinking in the back of my head.
All those things.
Yeah, I can just get out of this application and let me check this thing real quick. Let me check my email real quick. Let me check, whatever it is. And it's like those triggers, you have to be able to eliminate them. And that's one thing that reading out of a book does. And you got to model it.
You got to take your phone and almost move it out of the way because when it starts dinging, it's really hard to do it. It's hard to read a book and not be distracted. Yeah. You literally have to be intentional and move the phone.
Especially if you're not conditioned for it.
Yeah, it took me a long time to be able to do it. But then once you do it, it's like, there's something to it where people, once you detox from the screen some and you sit still and learn to do that, then it's like, okay, whoa, this is how it used to be. It's like, but that's when people were happy. I mean, the numbers bear it out. The anxiety and all these things, like I said, that Jonathan Haidt thing, that's the number one things that he's suggesting is for kids not to get cell phones until high school, not to get social media to 16, but to also not just take things away, but to give them freedom to go out and to play without us being on top of them all the time.
Oh, yeah,
I know we talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm still on that video with the mom and the girl.
Oh, that? Yeah.
Because I'm still seeing like
the detransitioner videos
are heartbreaking.
Even heartbreaking. That Chloe Cole and I've been watching
drag shows for kids.
That's horrible.
Dude, what at one other time in human history was it okay for a man to dress up like a woman vulgarly and do a semi-erotic show for young kids? But we act like it's okay, and then we act like you're wrong to speak out against it. Where were you going to go?
So controversially, Katie and I talked a little bit about it, but she doesn't know. So, and why are kids able to do this? Because before it was always the father would step in and say, okay.
Wait, kids do what?
Transition, take hormones, all this crazy behavior. The fathers would step up and like, all right, enough. There's always been a dynamic between husband and wife. Women are naturally more nurturing, more loving. Men are always like kind of just the way that our bodies are built. Okay. If a guy's body, if you go like this, we're meant to push out. Women's bodies, if you take their arm like this, their arm literally goes and out. It's meant to pull.
This sounds like some bro science.
It is. No, it's the way that God designed us.
I believe in God's design.
Try to put
the whole arm thing feels a little bro science.
No, try to put your arms around your back. Try to touch your back. You can't do it.
Okay.
Women's, they can
I'm
take their,
so swole.
they could take their hands. No, they can touch their back. We can't do it. They're meant to literally to bring in, and our upper bodies are meant to push out. So what
You're gonna have a bunch of guys hugging their backs.
They can't do it. Good luck. Try it. It doesn't work. But women's the way that their bodies are made.
So they're meant to embrace. That's what you're saying. Okay.
So there's always been a dynamic between men and women, where women are always more generally, not all, but this is the way it's always been, is that it's always like, for my example, like I'm always was like kind of pushing a little bit to the edge, like playing with the kids, throwing them up in the air, flipping them around, playing roughhousing with them. And my wife would always like, oh, whoa, 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 slow it down. There's an interplay between.
Happens in my house every day.
Of course, because it's always that it's women are on the side of caution, and men are always kind of like push out a little bit, like, no, go explore. Women are like, bring it back. There's a play in between.
I forgot who I heard this from. It was it Harvard or Stanford did a study on kids' heart rates, like young kids. Yeah. I think the sample group was like 3 and younger. When they see their mom come through the door,
oh yeah,
they actually calm. But when they see their dad come through the door, their heart rate elevates because they're expecting that stimulus or lack of.
And that goes back to what I was saying about playing. Like rough and tumble play is super important in kids' development because that's how they figure out how their body, like boundaries and stuff like that with their body. But so my question is, so we know what toxic masculinity is. What is it? That's when men go too far and they're sexist and all these kinds of things. Well, what's it when a woman goes too far? Because I've never heard anyone talk about it. Like, is there such a thing where a mother is either too smothering, like Freud would call the devouring mother? And is that the rise of women having more, influence in the household, the workplaces and stuff, where we have this generation of kids who are able to change their sex, are able to be furries, are able to do these things when at the time the dad would step up and be like, all right, enough. Like there's no, like, where is that? There's always a healthy balance. Not to say that man is in charge, but there was always a dialogue back and forth. Now it doesn't seem like there's any conversation about when does femininity go too far. When we know when a man does, but when can a woman go too far? Is there such thing as a devouring mother, or is that part of like what's going on in society? And 80% of teachers are female. A lot of problems come from the schools. I'm not saying it's all teachers' problems, but there's all these things where the society is going off the rails. How much of that has to do with treating children to the point of like their feelings, everything's okay, instead of pushing them out of the nest and saying, no, you have to struggle. You have to do these things. How much of that, and how do we identify it? Is that an issue? Is that too much? Or am I going off the rails? I don't know.
No, you're spot on, because we started off the show impromptu by saying that God has a plan.
Yeah.
And in God's plan, I don't know about the arms thing.
That's for sure, 100%.
I'm going to take your word for it because, I trust you. But God has a plan. So the dignity of the man, dignity of the woman are equal, but they're different.
Yes, complementary.
They're complementary to each other by design. And so therefore, each character has its own set of traits, and they're meant to complement each other. Yeah. I think what you're getting at, what I'm hearing is toxic femininity looks like a skewed sense of compassion.
Yeah, everyone's an infant to that point. Like,
where they want to mother and they want to give in, and it's not compassion guided by charity, which sets boundaries for the good of the other, right? You love the other for the other's sake. No, it's this false sense of compassion is, I'm going to give you whatever you want. I'm going to accept you for whoever you say you are. And I'm not going to say no to you. I'm going to try to, because to say no isn't compassionate, right? It's not nurturing. It's not me bringing you in. Yeah. That's a skewed version of what it means to be compassionate.